Flow maps show how things move from one area to another area. This could be from one point to another point, along a line, or it could be from one area such as a country into another country. These can vary from very simple, such as this hurricane tracking map, which is showing where the hurricane is likely to make landfall in the southern United States, to something much more complex, like how birds migrate from one place to another. The examples we'll look at are kind of in the middle here, like these examples here, showing how, for example, French wines are exported around the world. This first example here shows the slave trade from 1700 to 1870, and this is illustrated by the black arrows here, with the width of the arrow representing the volume of slaves that were traded. And we can also see that that varied the color of the arrow from black when there is more reliable data to gray when there is less reliable data here. These maps are very informative and very eye-catching. They're also very hard to make in most typical GIS because it's almost like we're putting a graphic over top of a map, and that graphic has to be just as well designed as the map. This is an example here, a classic graphic example, which is also a map, which shows Napoleon's march to Moscow from 1812 and over the winter and then back in 1813. In this example here, this is as he's moving towards Moscow. He and his troops are moving towards Moscow. And once again, the width of the line represents how many troops are there. And as we can see, there's a great die-off of troops as they went through Russia to Moscow, and then on their retreat they lost even more and more troops until they finally came back. So although this looks more like a graph, it actually is sort of a map graph to show how Napoleon fared as he moved on this campaign. Here's another flow map. This shows how different diseases such as smallpox and leprosy spread throughout the world, and it's a very eye-grabbing map for a couple of reasons. It does show the spread and how it goes from place to place, such as how leprosy began in Africa here and then spread throughout the world. But it also has a very organic feel because it kind of shows all the branching out to different places. So it almost looks like veins and arteries in a heart or a human organ. It has a very organic feel to it, which makes it a very striking map. And another example of a flow map is shown here. This is showing basically how various resources were traded through the Great Lakes region. We can see that the red line here represents iron ore. A lot of iron ore mined up in this area here, and then most of that was transported to this area here for coal mine or for steel mills, but some of it came down through the other lakes as well. So we get a really interesting, and the blue here represents the coal, where the coal was coming from, mostly from this area, and then being transported back in this direction here. So this is a quite complex flow map, but it really nicely summarizes a lot of interesting information about how natural resources were distributed on the Great Lakes.